Um, are you aware that a criminal investigation has also taken place with respect to Mr. Johnson, Mr. Kochi, and Mr. Winters?
Yes.
Have you had any involvement in that criminal investigation?
I was contacted by a couple of detectives. I think I had a conversation with somebody at the DA's office.
Okay. And when approximately was that?
I'm saying 2005 through for a couple years. I don't know exact dates.
Okay. Do you remember any of the detectives that talked with you?
Andy Caldwell was one I believe I talked to him the most, and then Nate Chio maybe.
Okay. You mentioned the date of 2005. Do you recall back in 2005 the discussion that you may have had with detectives, whether it pertains specifically to the 2005 and 2008 transactions you were talking about, or whether it pertained to something else?
There was a lot of different things that they asked me about. I believe it could have pertained to this as well.
Okay. Was there another investigation that was done into those individuals I described, Mike Winters, Mike Johnson, Robert Kochi? Any criminal investigation you're aware of?
I believe there were some other things they were being investigated for.
Do you recall if that was just specific to Mike Winters?
I don't recall.
Okay. When you met with detectives and the district attorney, what was your understanding of what they were contacting you about?
They were just asking questions about the water district, certain employees, and different transactions that have taken place.
Okay. At some point, did they ask you about the 2008 transaction?
I believe they asked me about if I understood what the transaction entailed.
And just briefly describe that transaction, if you would.
The 2008 transaction?
Right.
Basically that Mr. Linetti had some water rights that he wanted to sell. He worked, had Mr. Johnson consult for him to help him do what he needed to do to get approvals both through the state to be able to get that water in a position to sell that water. Mr. Johnson took that water to Southern Nevada Water Authority, and they wanted one of the permits because it had a high priority date, and one of them they didn't want. Conversation went on. Johnson went back and asked if we could get if you would buy both permits from Mr. Linetti, and if Virgin Valley Water District would then trade some of their water rights, would you be willing to enter into a kind of a simultaneous transaction? All those things kind of fell in place with those individuals that we talked about. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Winters come back to the board in 2008, present the information about the structure of the deal, how they're gonna trade water. I believe it was permit 54383, 1,200 acre foot of water, to SNWA was going to trade that water that they'd purchased from Linetti to the Virgin Valley Water District in exchange for the water rights that the district had, which was the higher priority water, which was valued at around $7 million. So, in essence, the water district ends up with water that's valued at $3 million. They give up water that's valued at $7 million. And then later, these individuals receive the $1.3 million payoff.
So And I asked you that question in the context of the questions you were being asked by detectives or the DA or whatever. That transaction you just described in 2008, is that the transaction they were asking you about?
They asked me a lot of questions. They asked me if I knew he would have been involved in certain transactions, certain things, and those types of things. So if it was specific, I don't recall the conversations exactly what they asked me. I was involved in some conversations. They had questions about different things that they'd received.
Okay. You mentioned you're on city council.
Yes.
You were also a former board member. In your opinion, you also mentioned you're a lifetime resident of Mesquite, right? In your opinion, is this case important? The civil litigation we're involved in now, is it an important case?
It's huge. I mean, it's this case goes to, we had individuals who were in positions of a high level of trust to defend and protect the water rights that are to be used out in the Virgin Valley Water District to provide water for the residents out there. These individuals have abused that trust, betrayed that trust, and basically sold us down the river. Not only lost water, lost money. It just continues to, you cannot put value or price on the fact of these transactions and what these individuals that work for the Virgin Valley Water District did.
Based on your interactions in the community as a city councilman, are you aware of communities of, I guess, general awareness of what's happening in this case? Do you think that the community at large is generally aware of what's going on?
Absolutely. I mean, there's articles about this all the time. I get asked about it. When I ran for office back in 2011, it was one of the questions. How do you feel about what happened at the water district? You were on that board, and I told people what I thought. It is being watched heavily about how these proceedings are going forward. There was an article the last couple of days about how our previous general counsel now basically jumped ship and helps the other side. Somebody that was supposed to represent the district for 17 plus years, and now he gives information or whatever to the other side. There's a high level of concern from the residents out there.
You mentioned articles. What kind of articles are you talking about?
One of the most recent was in the Mesquite Citizen Journal. A lot of the papers follow it. The Mesquite Citizen Journal follows it very closely, constantly interested in the proceedings of what's going on. There's been numerous articles both out there, local papers in Las Vegas, press. I mean, this is not a case that's not known. It is known.
You worked with George Benish, you mentioned, when you were president of the board. At some point you learned that George Benish, as you said, had jumped ship or whatever, traded sides, whatever. How did you feel when that occurred, when you found out about that?
You feel betrayed. You see, he worked, like I said, he worked for the district for a number of years. He was the one that was supposed to ensure that the water that we had out there was protected for the use out there.
As you've interacted with people around Mesquite, would you feel that they have that same sentiment about George Benish jumping ship, as you said?
Objection, speculation.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can move on.
Okay.